to look out for cheating. That's been eliminated. They've scrapped the vocabulary section. They've changed it all around. There's now no longer a penalty for guessing. In the vocabulary, the SAT, Mr. Coleman said, well, you know, all those obscure words that you had to know in literature, you don't need to know those anymore. You just need the words you need for your career. Those are the only words that you need to know. In the math section, they dropped whole topics. You remember Common Core slowed the math progression down? So if the SAT tests higher math, but we didn't teach higher math, then all the kids would fail. But if we take out the questions that were above what we're teaching, all the children will still get a high grade, all the parents will see that grade, they'll all be happy, nobody will know that the test changed to hide the lack of achievement. This is not measuring a student against a standard, it is measuring the standard against the student. You know, Common Core says it's rigorous. And they say we want all of our children to achieve. There are two ways to do that. You can either move the bar up and then challenge kids to reach it, or you can move the definition of success down and say, look, they made it. This moves the definition of success down and then says, look, they made it. Reliability, remember, valid and reliable. Reliability is the degree to which my assessment produces results that are stable and consistent. If I give this test today and I give it a week from now, will the results be the same? Can I count on the test results? Have you ever stood on your bathroom scale? So you stand on your bathroom scale, and every morning it says 125 pounds, probably not for the gentleman. And you say, that's every day. It's wonderful. It's reliable. I can count on it. Then you go to the doctor, and you get on this scale, and it has a completely different number. That means it wasn't valid, because the doctor's scale is because it's actual weights. So you can be reliable without being valid, because reliable just means your bathroom scale every day gave you the same number. Valid means the number was right. A good test is both. It's right, and it's always the same, just like your bathroom scale. And you all know when the battery on your bathroom scale is dying, or when it's about to give up the ghost, because you get on it, and yesterday it said 125, and today it says 340. Okay, probably gained 200 pounds in one day. So it must be the scale. Reliable, same number every day. How can we check reliability? It's the same over time. If I do alternate versions of the test, I get the same number, and all of the judgments about the test are the same. So there's 3 ways to measure reliability. This is from the National Research Council. It's a federal think tank. It's called Incentives and Test-Based Accountability in Education, and they actually talk about what makes tests reliable. And what they found is that when we start giving these big tests, these big high-stakes tests, when you first give them, you have some issues. And that from the very beginning, the test scores will differ from one occasion to another, even when there's been no change in the test taker's proficiency, because of chance either differences in the questions or differences in the child. Remember we talked about that with validity? Your dog died last night? Well, that affects reliability as well. Last night my dog died. 3 weeks from now I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm going to get a better grade. So the test isn't reliable because the conditions of the child will change. And they said researchers always know that. So they don't treat these test results as true scores, except in Common Core. When teacher evaluation and promotion and graduation is based on it, all of a sudden, things that we have known for years, these aren't accurate, these aren't valid and reliable. They're an indicator that we need to put with all the other indicators to see if it matches. But now, we're ignoring what we already knew. What else did we already know? We knew that when they start giving a test that All of education starts moving toward teaching to the test. We've all heard that, right? Everybody teaches to the test. Well, the research said, of course it did. Because the teachers if they know that this question's going to be on the test, I ignore everything that's not on the test. I was in Tennessee, and one of the educators said, yeah, we know, for example, that in the history test there were going to be this many questions about the Seneca Falls. So every teacher taught about Seneca Falls, because we knew it was going to be a test. So of course we taught about it. So teachers begin to narrow the curriculum to match what they know is in the test. And that's what the research showed. So scores increase on that test. I start giving this test, the first year they do here, scores are going to go up. Because the teachers get better at figuring out what's in the test. And when the test is high stakes, they teach to it, and they teach to it, and they teach to it. But that doesn't mean that they've actually mastered the subject. It just means that they've mastered the test. In fact, the studies say that gains on these tests don't generalize to other assessments given the same time in the same subject. So if we give a different test, they don't do as well. Because you only taught to that one narrow test. It narrows the instruction. That means we're saying that this means they've learned 9th grade history. But they didn't. They learned that 9th grade history test. They didn't actually learn 9th grade history. Did you ever watch the Olympics? And in the Olympics, you've all seen the figure skating and the gymnasts, right? 9 different judges watch the same athlete do the same performance at the same time and give it 9 different scores. In fact, in some cases, it's been so severe that they've gone to great lengths to attempt to change the scoring mechanisms because the differences in the subjective judgments of the graders have made such a ruckus. I told you we'd look at this later. This is from your Massachusetts assessment system. There's the scoring guideline. That's kind of small, so we'll make it bigger. In order to get 4 points, the student demonstrates an exemplary understanding of the operations and algebraic thinking concepts. 3 points. The student demonstrates a good understanding. What's the difference between exemplary and good? It's a totally subjective judgment. It is subjective from person to person, and even within one person. Have you ever talked to a teacher who actually explains to you when you give an essay test, you grade it, the first child's grade is a little different than the last child's grade. Because you're not as tired by the time you get to child number 35, or if it's in a high school and you teach multiple classes, 100. And if everybody's done really well, and then you get to one that's not, you're probably a little more lenient than if everybody's done really badly. The longer it goes, the more irritated you get, so the harsher it gets. Or, maybe had a glass of wine in the middle, so you were much more relaxed as you went through. It's called subjective scoring. But these tests are being used to determine promotion and graduation, and whether a child goes into remediation or moves forward, and whether a teacher is licensed or not. Again, objective decisions are being made on subjective data. That's neither valid nor reliable. And you have no way of knowing, as the parent or the teacher, okay, was the person who graded that child's paper a martinet or a loosey-goosey? You don't know. So you don't know how that score compares to anything else. By definition, this does not meet the test for reliable. New York, I told you, was another governing school. This is actually their scoring rubric. And they say they're telling the teachers to guard against the scorers, to guard against scoring biases, like what the handwriting looks like. If it's hard to read, don't let that affect your scoring, right? Because they're not human beings. If you find the content disturbing, your grammatical biases shouldn't count. Don't look at the writer's personality. You're scoring, not grading. So this is a 4th grade example. right from the rubric. And the little one reads a myth, and they write, the theme of the myth is that if you keep trying, something good will help you, because when the little bird broke its, spelled wrong, wing, and asked, wrong tense, 3 trees to help them, there was 1 bird, not plural, they rejected the little bird. Also, when the little bird asked, wrong tense, 3 other trees, they held, wrong tense, the little bird. Now, it's a time test, should ignore that. By 4th grade, they should be using the correct syntax for its. They should know the difference between singular and plural, and they should at least be matching the tense most of the time. And yet, in the scoring, if you look at the very bottom, the response, it includes complete sentences where errors do not impact readability. In fact, in the scoring rubrics, it says if you can figure out what the child meant to say, do not consider spelling, syntax, or grammar errors. So if I wrote the number 2, the letter B, or not, the number 2, the letter B, could you figure out what I wanted to say? So I wrote it correctly, didn't I? If spelling and grammar doesn't count in the test, and the test is high stakes, is it going to be stressed in the classroom? No, it's not. Last part of valid and reliable is that it's supposed to be independent, meaning that there can't be any conflicts of interest. There can't be any financial connection or professional connection between the program implementer and the program evaluator. We know that. The National Institute of Health actually has guidelines for it, saying clinical investigators can't serve on the same entity that's monitoring the trial of that entity. Even if you're in Group A and you're monitoring Group B. Because if you help develop the product, of course you want it to succeed, so you can't have a connection. And you shouldn't have any financial interest in it either, for all the same reasons. It's a conflict of interest. State law says nonprofits have to have audits, and the audits have to be done independently. The auditor has to be independent. They can't be an employee of the nonprofit, they can't be a board member of the nonprofit, they have to be absolutely independent so they can look at the data. Yet in education, the State Department of Education establishes the standards, oversees the curriculum, creates the assessment, supervises the test administration, determines the cut score, scores the test, and reports on its own results. If you were a bank, would you give a business a loan based on that kind of information? Yet that is the only information you get on the education of your children. It is a closed system. You have no way of knowing what's been manipulated and what hasn't been manipulated. Not valid, not reliable, not objective. Yet you're supposed to trust the education of your children to this system. A system that doesn't work at any level. Now I get asked all the time, so what do you do about it? The first thing you need to do about it is get the facts. Remember those videos I showed you at the beginning? This is a war of intelligence. Our opponents have carefully crafted talking points. They walk you around in circles everywhere that they possibly can. In a war of intelligence, the ignorant always lose. So get the facts. I just fed you through a fire hose. You're going to walk out and say, I agree with her, but I don't remember most of what she said. Take a video, bring it home, look at it more than once, have a Common Core coffee clutch, bring people to your house, let them watch it, take it to your church, take it to your PTA, take it to anywhere you want. Lend it to friends, but make sure you say, so what'd you think of it, so they actually watch it. You want the information to get out there. Do not leave without at least one. Do not lose the war of intelligence. Secondly, protect your own children first. People always say, I can't believe you're going to say this, but I am. If your children are in a public school, take them out tomorrow. Does that mean I hate the public schools? No. Don't stop being involved yourself. It's worth fighting for. It's what makes America so different. All of our kids have a shot. But right now, those schools are the front lines of the battlefields of education, and we as Americans do not put our children on the front lines of anything. So if you can remove your children, remove them. It's funny, last time I was in New York, a mother came up to me. She said when her child finished kindergarten, he was adorable and everything went well, and then the school started Common Core in first grade, and he developed anxiety attacks, and he wouldn't leave the house. And he would pound himself in the head saying, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. And she went to the school and said, what happened to my son? He reverted to baby talk. And they said, well, it's not our fault, it must be your fault. She went to a psychiatrist, she went to doctors, and in December she pulled him out of the public school and put him in a school that wasn't doing Common Core, and she said, my son reappeared in weeks. In front of the New York State Senate Education Committee, a social worker testified saying, thank you, my caseload has doubled. I have 6-year-olds who are cutting themselves because they don't know what to do with the pressure. Do not do that to your children. Homeschool, private school, find another option. If you are a grandparent and you have children who you know can't afford it, pay the tuition for them. The first thing we need to do is take our children out of harm's way. If you are a teacher in a public school system, stay as long as you can. Fight for every child in your classroom. Do everything you can to protect them. You are the front lines of defense for all the kids who can't escape. Make sure you're a good shield. Do everything you can to protect the kids in front of you. Get involved politically. People say, oh, I hate politics. I just don't like it. Yeah, but politics likes you. Because your whole life is governed by politics. So if there's a candidate who's willing to stand up or an elected official who's willing to come tonight, and there were a couple here, make sure you support them on election time. Not just with, oh, good job to you. Write a check. Make 10 phone calls. Knock on 10 doors. Stand at the polls on election day. Trust me, our opponents are supporting the people that are doing what they need to have done. We need to stand with our guys and gals as well. They need to know we have their backs. If there's a candidate running and you're not sure where they stand, hold their feet to the fire. Attend every meeting. What do you think about? If the answer is yes or no and you don't get one, you get one of these equivocating sort of mushing around. So I noticed you didn't say yes, or I noticed you didn't say no. Just wondering why I couldn't get a clear answer. Was a yes or no question. Are you for it or against it? Trust me, those who are against it say so. If there are Stop Common Core signs, put one in your yard. Every one of you has a sphere of influence. People who do things because you do. So if they see a sign in your yard, it's a conversation starter. Join a group like Donna's here, whether it's Facebook or whatever, to become involved and get connected with other people. Start conversations. It's amazing. You can, in beauty parlors and grocery stores. I say, so have you heard about Common Core? You would be amazed at the number of people who go, yeah, but what is it? They just want to know. They want somebody to tell them. They all think they're lost. You know, I was an advisor to the Reagan Commission. I was 6 at the time, of course. I was a prodigy. It was amazing. President Reagan once said, we are only ever one generation away from losing our freedom. It isn't transmitted in the bloodstream of our children. We have to defend it. We have to pass it on. We have to teach it to them. Because if we don't do that, we may become the generation that has to tell our children and our children's children about a United States where people used to be free. I have no intention of being a member of that generation. I never want to stand in the position of having to look my granddaughter in the eyes and say, because of my lack of effort, the United States was a country where people used to be free. Not going to happen. But in order for me to succeed, you need to do that as well. You need to embrace your heritage, not just as the receivers of freedom, but as its defenders.